Hi, I'm Marc, and welcome to the weekly Outside Views report on European politics. And today I do need to talk about the Ukraine war again. But I will start with an incident on the sideline, so to speak, because British and German jets intercepted 3 Russian planes over the Baltic Sea, and it is the 5th incident of this kind. Fighter jets from the British and German military took off over the Baltic Sea on Friday to intercept several initially unidentified aircraft near NATO airspace. As it turned out, the British Royal Air Force said it was 3 Russian jets. One of the Russian machines, an Ilyushin 20 Kud A reconnaissance aircraft, was on a transfer flight from the Russian mainland to the Kaliningrad exclave. It was accompanied by 2 Su-27 Flanker B fighter jets from Kaliningrad. The German and British jets would have escorted the Russians through the Estonian flight information area until the Swedish Air Force took over. Sweden is not yet part of NATO, and Turkey has so far blocked the admission process. A Royal Air Force pilot involved is quoted in the British statement. He reports that Russian military aircraft fly more frequently over the Baltic Sea, so it was a routine maneuver. The Royal Air Force and the German Luftwaffe have been operating jointly from Estonia since March as part of Operation Azotes to protect NATO's Baltic airspace. And as I said, it was the 5th joint intercept flight. And meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called on NATO to clear the way for his country to join the Western military alliance at its summit in July. Neither in Ukraine, nor in Europe, nor in NATO would the majority of the population understand if Kiev did not receive a well-deserved invitation. That is what Zelensky said in his daily video address on Thursday evening. On Wednesday, he received NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg in Kiev for the first time since the Russian war of aggression began almost 14 months ago. The meeting was not just about defending Ukraine, but about defending the entire rule-based international order and protecting life, said the president. Hardly anyone is currently contributing more to Euro-Atlantic security than the Ukrainian soldiers, he says, and Kiev therefore did everything to ensure that their request was fulfilled. Several members of the alliance have reservations about Ukraine's admission, though. The next NATO summit of heads of state and government will take place in Lithuania on July 11th and 12th. Finland will also be there for the first time as a new NATO member, which had given up its decades of non-alignment because of Russia's war of aggression. Sweden's application for membership, based on the same consideration, is currently, as I said, being blocked by Turkey, but also by Hungary. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius assumes that the decision on Ukraine's entry into NATO will only be made after Russia's war of aggression has ended. The door is open a bit, but this is not the time to decide now, said the Social Democrat on Thursday evening on German public television. To do this, you have to first fend off this conflict, this attack, and then in the new era, you have to weigh up this step carefully. It's not a question that you just meet out of solidarity because the step has an effect. You have to decide with a cool head and a warm heart and not the other way around, he says. During his surprise visit to Kiev, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg promised Ukraine further support in its efforts to join the military alliance. So far, there is no precise timeline for Ukraine's accession, though. At the beginning of April, Stoltenberg had indirectly ruled out joining in times of war. Stoltenberg also referred to a support program announced at the beginning of April for Ukraine's planned NATO membership. The multi-year initiative is intended to make it easier for the country to adapt to alliance standards and enable seamless cooperation with NATO. It was proof of NATO's long-term commitment in Ukraine, that was said by Stoltenberg in Kiev. Ahead of the Rammstein talks on Western military aid to Ukraine, Estonia announced it would supply more weapons to the country under Russian attack. The aid package includes artillery ammunition with a caliber of 155 mm, as the Ministry of Defense announced in Tallinn on Thursday. This is Estonia's contribution to an agreement between EU countries to supply Ukraine with 1 million artillery shells. The Baltic EU and NATO country also wants to hand over night vision devices and ammunition for handguns to Kiev. Ukraine has been resisting Russian attacks and occupation, as I said, for nearly 14 months and is largely dependent on Western support for military equipment. On Friday, the Western allies discussed the further aid in Ramstein and Rhineland-Palatinate in Germany. And Denmark and the Netherlands want to provide Ukraine with 14 Leopard 2A4 main battle tanks. The two neighboring countries to Germany wanted to announce this in Ramstein as well, but they already announced that on Thursday. Accordingly, these are not tanks from the state's own stocks, but rather tanks that are purchased from the stocks of German industry. They are overhauled and then donated to Ukraine. According to the information, they can be delivered from the beginning of 2024. The costs for the two countries amount to a total of 165 million euros. And the Netherlands also want to take part in two initiatives for the procurement of artillery ammunition. The first is the EU initiative, which I talked about, to which the Netherlands is contributing 130 million euros. In addition, a German initiative is also being supported with 130 million euros. These capabilities will further enable Ukraine to fight to liberate parts of the country from Russian occupation, said Dutch Defense Minister Kaiser Ollongren. Ukrainian and European security are inextricably linked. Ukraine has long ago asked Western countries to help it with the supply of main battle tanks to defend against the Russian war of aggression. Germany and several other European countries have already provided different models of Leopard tanks. Other countries, such as the USA, Great Britain and France, also with other types of tanks. After the Russian embassy in Bern threatened a Swiss journalist on Thursday, now even the Swiss Foreign Ministry summoned the Russian ambassador. On this occasion, the Russian ambassador was informed that the statements are unacceptable and that this type of intimidation of media workers will not be tolerated, the ministry said. And you have to manage to get Swiss angry, really. On April 13th, the Russian embassy attacked a journalist from the Neue Zürcher Zeitung by name in a press release on its website. They accused him of using his vocabulary to justify terrorism and promote incitement to hatred when reporting from a Russian-occupied part of Ukraine. And they threatened the journalist. In Russia, public justification of terrorism and terrorism propaganda via the media will be punished with a fine or imprisonment for a period of 5 to 7 years. A week earlier, the embassy had already sent a letter criticizing the NZZ reporting to editor-in-chief Eric Guya and published it on its website. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs reminded that journalists must be able to carry out their work without intimidation and fear, and this is guaranteed in the Swiss constitution. Foreign diplomats are obliged to respect the laws and regulations of the receiving country, including the constitution, and thus fundamental rights. Yeah, but they are in panic a bit at the moment, because according to British intelligence services, the Russian military may have repositioned itself in the occupied areas of Ukraine, and according to the situation report on Thursday, the British see a message from the Kremlin as a sign of this, in which the recent visit of Russian President Vladimir Putin to regional combat troops on the Dnipro River was discussed. The designation of these troops as a larger unit named after the Dnipro was new, as the British Ministry of Defense said. At the beginning of the war, the regional combat troops were named after their home districts in Russia. The fact that there is now a presumed new Russian Dnipro combat unit indicates that the military has reorganized itself, and the British suspect that the reason for this could be heavy casualties. The troops on the Dnipro were probably tasked with defending the southern part of the occupied territory. And so it is really important to stay informed as much as we can. There's a lot of information out there that cannot be confirmed, and of course, in At war, you cannot completely rely on the information from either side, neither the Russian, but that is more propaganda, I must say, and neither the Ukrainian one. So you need independent verifications. And so I'm really grateful with all the criticism I often have for the British government that the British Defense Ministry has given us a lot of information every day on what's going on this war. And so that's a really good thing. And I also have a channel called Outside Views Military. The link is in the description of this video, where I have a lot of videos recently because of the current developments with weapon deliveries to Ukraine, where I talk about these weapons that are delivered in a bit more detail. So if you want to get some background information on this, visit me on Outside Views Military. And I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.